What happens if there is yet another virus from yet another place a year from now? Will we lock down again like this? So all of us have, for the past 50 days or so, done everything that we need to do, that we've been told to do. Short of sitting in a soap solution, I think we have done everything. Some of us more diligent than others, but we've done that. But we must understand that all these precautions that we take are related to hygiene, and hygiene is about keeping us away from the virus, keeping our bodies away from the virus, which is important and necessary. I'm not challenging that at all. But we must understand that it is only a temporary solution and it is not the ultimate solution. So the ultimate solution lies in immunity, and that's what we are going to talk about today, which is different from hygiene. Because the virus at the end of the day can only be overcome, or for that matter, any health scare can only be overcome within our bodies, not without. So that is the only sustainable way forward. At least that's what we believe. And if you look at what a vaccine relies on, a vaccine also relies on our immune system to work very well. But I'm glad people are realizing it. I'm glad that people are coming around to it, and they are now talking about coexisting with corona. So that's why we wanted to talk about immunity in this, what we call a multi-part huddle series. Today, the first part, we will talk about how yoga can help with immunity. The next huddle sessions in the next couple of weeks, we'll talk about how our food impacts our immunity, both positively and negatively. And for those of you who are familiar with biobasics, this actually ties in with our motto of be organic, buy organic. Because when it comes to being organic means being one with nature, understanding nature, embracing nature, and seeking natural ways to deal with health scares like this. So to talk about this, let me welcome Anita, who is an educator by profession. She is a BITS Pilani graduate in engineering and a doctorate from the US in education. She's now a yoga teacher, and above all, she is a friend of biobasics. So I'd welcome Anita here. She is not only going to talk about how yoga can help, but also guide us through some exercises so that we can take away something to build into our daily lives. So please stay on till the end of the session. Before I hand it over to Anita, please note there are a few housekeeping stuff that I need to talk about. One is that we are recording this session, so everyone is on mute. But if you have any questions, use this chat feature. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Madhu, who is the host, who's helping me with this session, will pick up the questions and then post them to Anita, and we can hear Anita out. Finally, we'll have the contact details of Anita and Biobasics at the end of the session. So please stick around till then in case you want to reach us after the session. So we expect this session to last about 45 minutes. Anita will talk initially for about 15, and followed by the yoga practice or the breathing practice for about 15 minutes. And then we'll do a Q&A for another 15. So over to Anita. The first question that I have for Anita, which I can request her to address, is to tell us, Anita, how does yoga and Ayurveda, for that matter, all the traditional practices, how do they look at immunity, and how is it different from the mainstream allopathy view that we see normally? Over to you, Anita.
Sure, thanks, Ramesh. But before I start answering, I really want to thank Biobasics for putting this together and sort of also inviting me over to do this because for me, yoga is very close to my heart. So also making yoga relevant for these times. And I think it is very relevant for these times. So this gives me an opportunity to do that. So thank you very much. And like you said, Biobasics is like family for me. So I'm very happy to do this for Biobasics. So I thought like what you're asking is a very relevant question in terms of how the perspective of immunity is different from in yoga and other traditional complementary ways of looking at it. So first of all, if we look at a mainstream way of understanding immunity, it is sort of the ability that one has to resist a certain disease, especially a disease related to a pathogen, right? anything that is a pathogenic disease. Because when we talk about diabetes or anything like a lifestyle disease, we don't talk about immunity. Usually it's related to a pathogen related, a disease caused by a pathogen. And what is the ability that we have to resist it, right? That's the dominant view, or mostly how we understand it. If you look at yoga and Ayurveda, which is primarily the base from which I operate and what I have learned, the idea of immunity is not necessarily only to resist an external agent, but it's also the body's ability to keep itself healthy. So it means that it is looking at the functioning of the respiratory system, functioning of the circulatory system, functioning of the digestive system, functioning of the endocrine system, functioning of the hormonal system, and also the way the mind is. So we all know that when we are under a lot of stress, the immunity is down. That is generally a well documented piece of research, that under stress, the immunity goes down, right? So why is that under stress, immunity goes down? Because obviously the mind is not functioning well, the breath is not okay when you're under stress, maybe your digestive capacity is constrained, all that, right? So immunity is not only the ability to resist something that's coming from outside, but it is the internal environment. What is the quality of my internal environment is what immunity is. So in Ayurveda, they talk about tejas, ojas, and varchas, which is once I have taken the food in, I've digested it, it has become different levels. It has become blood, it has become my muscle, it has become the bone, it has become the tissue. And finally, the essence of it is what you see in the person being bright or not, and so on. And that is what they would call it immunity, right? So in yoga, it's similar, that it is related to the quality of my internal environment. And that quality, if I can maintain, then I'm able to resist something that comes from outside. Also, the other thing that's very important is it's not only a pathogen, but immunity is also about how do I handle changes in my life, right? Do I have the wherewithal? Really, immunity is talking about, do I have the wherewithal to deal with the ups and downs, the sudden changes, something unexpected that arrives my door or in my life. So how do I handle that? So immunity is not necessarily at a physical level, but also at all these levels of physiological, psychological, emotional, mental, and pervades all of this, right? So I don't know if that answers the point, but so I think what becomes therefore necessary when we look at immunity is to look at not just the quantity of, let's say, white blood cells, lymphocytes, T cells, all that. Do I have enough of that is at one level, but also what is the quality of my sleep? What is the quality of my relationships? What is the quality of my joy? Do I have enough joy in the work that I do? What is the lifestyle that I'm leading? What is the quality of my appetite? Do I feel hungry? These are all some basic factors which therefore give us an indication of also what immunity is in my body, in myself, right? So it's not only that counter of, okay, my blood cell, white blood cell count is between this and this, so I have good immunity. That's not what it is, but it also relates to all these other factors that I talked about. And therefore also it becomes very important to look at these basic, what we call parameters of everyday life. How's my sleep? How's the quality of my bowel movement? What is the quality of my appetite? Do I feel hungry? Do I eat the right kind of food? What is the diet that I'm eating? And so on and so forth. So that's how I would look at immunity.
Yeah, I think it fits in with what we've heard about the traditional methods, Ayurveda and yoga and some other alternative methods also. And I think while it's more of, that's why they're called holistic approaches as opposed to reductionist approaches, where we reduce a particular aspect of human anatomy to one number or two numbers. Instead of that, look at the whole thing from not just the physical side, the mental, the spiritual, everything put together. So that, I think it fits in very well. I think it also makes sense when you talk about the impact on the hormonal system, because when we talk about organic food at Biobasics, we also talk about how pesticides and other chemicals, particularly pesticides, which are called, which are effectively endocrine disruptors.
Yeah.
They harm the endocrine system, and thereby it affects the the ability of the body to do a certain set of activities, which the hormone systems, which regulate so many things and leading to things like obesity and hypothyroidism and all those kinds of diseases that we see. So it's quite interesting. So the next question I have for you is, okay, so how do we use yoga or Ayurveda? I think you're focusing more on yoga. So how do we use yoga more to enhance our immunity level?
Yeah, like I said, we are looking at how do we take care of our internal environment, because the external environment, there's not much we can do, which is what most of us try to do most of the time, try to keep the external things away outside. At some level, it's helpful. But like I said, we don't know what's going to come up. No, like you started saying, today we have COVID, tomorrow it could be something else. What do I do, right? So therefore, it's very important to take care of my internal environment. So now when I say my internal environment, what all is included in the internal environment? Like I said, what is the quality of my respiration? What is the quality of my digestive system? What is the quality of my circulatory system? What is the quality of my endocrine system? What is the quality of my hormonal system? And what is the quality of my mind? So it becomes extremely essential to look at the mind. It becomes extremely essential to look at not just the musculoskeletal structure, right? But also all these other subtle aspects. So what yoga does is to really bring about a sense of well-being and improve the functioning of all these systems so that the immunity builds, right? It's not just saying I will directly work only with the immunity. So if you go to somebody and say, can you teach me something for immunity? There's no text, nothing in yoga which says if you do this, your immunity will improve. What it will say is, if you do this, your breath will become better, your digestion will become better, your sleep will become better, therefore your circulation will become better. The elimination, which is very, very, very important, will become better. Because if we eliminate the toxins that are accumulating in our body on a daily basis, then we are keeping this environment clean, right? If I'm not taking care of eliminating properly, then there is no point in trying to add a vitamin D tablet to improve my immunity or take a vitamin E tablet supplement, all these things, right? So I think it becomes very essential, at least from the yoga perspective, especially in the tradition that I come from, which is the Krishnamacharya tradition and Deshikacharya's tradition, that we work with the breath. And we work with the breath to improve the quality of all these systems. Because breath is defined as prana. It is energy. It is what sustains us, right? So how do we use the breath to improve the functioning of the systems of the body, so that ultimately, like I said, immunity is an outcome of that. If my internal systems are functioning well, then by default, I will have good immunity. So that's how in yoga we approach. Like when you asked how can yoga help immunity, is to really look at one, calming your mind, looking at your diet. So therefore, to look at what you're eating, how is that adding to your toxic overload? And I'm sure Biobasics can really help with that, right? Looking at what, at least to begin with, we can eat organic food so that the toxic overload in our system is reduced. And doing something to further eliminate the toxins that have accumulated in our body, right? And the third thing is to get into some kind of a routine of a basic asana pranayama practice, which can help you to reduce the amount of stress in your life, help you understand yourself better. Because if you understand your mind, understand your self better, then you begin to make better choices in your life, which by their own nature will reduce the amount of stress you're feeling. And once the amount of stress is reduced, obviously your immunity is going to improve. So that's how we would look at yoga supporting immunity, not necessarily as a physical form of exercise to increase the blood cell, white blood cell count, or increase the lymphocyte count or anything like that, but really to develop an overall sense of well-being and a sense of health. That's what yoga is all about.
So actually, the one of the questions that we at Biobasics we keep getting is from folks who I mean, all of us eat, and then we debate whether to go organic or not organic. And so one of the questions that we often get is that how do we really know whether a particular food that we eat is adding to the what they call the toxic overload? So help us understand. Sure. What do you mean by toxic overload? What is it that and how do you know that the toxic overload is high or low, or how do we know that?
Sure, that's a brilliant question, because just as you asked that question, an anecdote popped in my mind, and this is an anecdote that my teacher has told me about Krishnamacharya. So I'll just share it. Krishnamacharya is supposed to have been so sensitive that he could actually, the minute he would sit down to eat the food that he was going to eat, he could sense the kind of thoughts that went into the food that he was eating. Apparently, especially if it was something that was coming from outside, he would say, no, I don't want to eat that food because I know that food is going to cause me problem. So the sensitivity, so what we are saying is toxic. So there are two things to look at, right? One is what do I define as toxicity? And the other is, do I have the sensitivity to perceive that toxicity, right? So let's look at what is toxicity. So one is toxicity could be at the level of, like you're talking about the pesticides, the chemicals that are really present in our food. So that is at a very molecular level, like at a very gross level, right? But then there could also be very subtle toxicity, right? Like the person who's cooking the food, if they're having, I don't know, unhealthy thoughts, or they're angry that day, the food is going to turn out not so great. Sometimes that happens to me, as I'm cooking. If my mind is distracted, I'm upset about something, the kind of, the taste of the food is not very good that day. But that is at a subtler level of toxicity. Then the toxicity of what I'm listening, no? Am I listening to garbage? Constantly I'm listening. What are my senses picking up? No, that is also at a level of toxicity, right? So toxicity could be coming from any of these things, not necessarily only the food that we eat. What we watch, what we hear, what we touch, what we smell, what we taste, all that. We may or may not have the sensitivity to observe this toxicity, no? So if I've been listening only to heavy metal music all the time, every day of my life, I may not be sensitive enough to see that it may be actually causing a lot of disharmony inside of me. I'm not saying it's good or not good or bad, but maybe for me, it's not healthy, right? So it's not a judgment on whether it is good or bad, but it is about what is it doing to me. So do I have the sensitivity to understand what this particular thing is doing to me, right? So it's also therefore about sensitivity. Now, sensitivity can develop in many ways, and yoga practice is also about developing that sensitivity. So every day when I get to my practice and I observe that today my breath is like this. Why is it like this? No, is it because of what I ate yesterday night that I'm feeling so heavy, that I'm feeling bloated? What did I eat yesterday night that didn't agree with me? What did I eat this morning that didn't agree with me? So you begin to observe, and through that observation, develop that sensitivity. The other thing is, this is at a subtle level. At a very gross level, when we enter a toxic environment, no, something very obviously toxic, what happens to us? Our eyes are watering. Maybe we feel breathless. Maybe we have a headache, all these things. So our body also gives us very, very obviously gross signals if we are not sensitive enough sometimes to pick it up, right? So very gross signal could be, I feel like puking, I'm feeling nauseous, I feel headache, my eyes are watering, I have skin allergies, I have rashes. All these indicate that somewhere something is toxic in your environment, external environment, and you're picking up on it. Now that toxicity could be related to diet, it could be related to your relationships, it could be related to what you're reading, what you're watching, what you're engaged in, the work that you do, any of these things, right? So we have to begin to understand how do we identify toxic elements in our external environment, and therefore stay away from those if we want to build a healthy environment to begin with, at least, and therefore improve our ability to handle toxicity over time, of course, you will be able to handle it better.
Yeah, the problem there, Anita, is that most of us, we get used to the way we live, right? So
Yeah.
our food, our health, you talked about relationships, how we behave, what we do at
Right.
home, what we do at work. And
Yeah.
that very easily we accept it as our norm. That's how we get used to it. So,
Yeah. And we
and we
get
wake
used
up,
to it, and the body doesn't know what to do. So it tries to give you signals either through
right,
fever, migraine, headaches, whatever else. But
exactly.
we don't listen to it. We pop a pill,
Right,
and then the body then shoves it all in some corner of our body.
right.
And then we have a lifestyle disease much later on.
Right.
It could
And
be heart
essentially,
disease
yeah,
or
you're right. So when we wake up only when we get a jolt. Usually, like a health scare, it could be like this particular COVID situation, that's an external thing, but something that can happen from inside. So when
absolutely.
my question would be, okay, how can we preempt it? Can we, instead of waiting for an accident
Your relationships, it could be the work that you're doing, you're not happy with it, all that, right? If the answer to any of this is anything less than great, okay, which is true for all of us. I'm sure I can find things in my life, like I said
yeah,
today, oh, my appetite is not good. So obviously there is some stress. Obviously there's some toxin in my life today.
right,
So not to think that all of us is ideal at any given moment. We have a long way to go. But if we can consciously keep these factors in mind and say that as long as this is not great, it means there is still a residue in my life of toxicity. There is still something that I need to address. And to look at it as a process every day, no? Like you have a bath every day, we clean our teeth every day, we clean our house, we sweep, mop our house every day. But do we do that for our body? Do we do that for our mind? Do we do that for our thoughts? Do we do that for our emotions? We don't. And all of that accumulates and affects these other psychological aspects, which is like I said, the sleep. So therefore, my sleep might be disturbed. I might be getting dreams. I might be waking up in the middle, all that, right? I might be having difficulty going back to sleep. My appetite may be fluctuating. I may be eating too much because I have a craving, or I may not be feeling hungry at all. So these are factors that indicate to us that we already have toxicity in our body that we need to address. And therefore, coming back to our lifestyle, no? Asking myself, am I doing what I really want to do? Am I in, how are my relationships creating stress for myself, and how am I contributing to stress in my relationship? So you really have to look at everything.
Anita, I think is everybody? I'm not sure if everybody is able to hear. Your voice just went down a little bit.
Oh, okay. Because I was holding it like this. Now is it
Okay. This
better?
is better. This is better.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So you want to step into the
Yeah.
exercises or what you were
Sure.
planning?
So what I was thinking we could do is, for example, so the two basic things that is very important in this tradition is working with the breath and the body. How do I align my breath with my body, right? Because like I said, ultimately breath is an indicator of prana, the amount of energy that I have available for the different life processes. And if I improve the quality of my breath, if I improve how I breathe, then naturally I improve all the other functionings and therefore my immunity. So because we're talking about immunity, breath is directly connected to immunity at a very, very basic level also, because breath is connected to the lungs, and because we are saying respiratory issues and all that, no? In the context of COVID and everything, how do I work with my respiratory capacity? That becomes very important. Yeah. And for that, like I said, the first thing is elimination. So if I have to create a certain internal environment that is healthy, I should know how to eliminate properly. And therefore, in the context of the breath, I need to know how to exhale properly. If I don't know how to exhale properly, it doesn't matter what comes in. No, I first have to clear out the toxins that are existing in my body, right? So at the cellular level, each cell is giving away toxins, no, in the form of carbon dioxide, in the form of small, whatever it is trying to throw out of its system. So that's what we try to do with our breath. So let's start. I thought we'll do a short 10-minute practice, which maybe all of you can try out and see how it helps calm your mind, bring some certain attention to the exhalation so that you can breathe out completely, and also to reduce the amount of stress in your life, in the body, feel more relaxed and all that. Yeah. So wherever you're sitting, you can sit comfortably. Maybe if you can keep your laptop a little away from me so that you can see away from you so that you can see me and all that. So for what I'd like you to do first is just to sit comfortably. Maybe your feet are on the floor or you cross-legged, whatever is comfortable for you. The first thing is to find some comfortable position. Make sure you're not leaning back on the wall. Just come a little forward. And and as you observe your natural breath, what I would like you to start doing is on your exhale, as you exhale, gently start exhaling with the sound Om. So it would be like this. You take a natural inhalation. Don't try to take a deep inhale or anything like that. Let it be a natural inhalation. And as you exhale, you say Om, as long as you can, as long as your breath, whatever is the length of the exhalation for you. Once that is over, you inhale again. And again, when you exhale, again you do Om. All the while paying attention to where your hand is, the area below your navel. Continue doing this for another 3 more breaths. Inhale normally. And as you exhale, you're going to pay attention to the lower abdomen and chant Om. Two more times. Relax your entire body as you're doing this. Last time. Yeah, good. So what we are doing when we do this is we are trying to really empty out the lower lobes of our lungs by, bringing attention to the lower abdomen and exhaling from there. Because a lot of the times we are doing very shallow breathing, which is just at the chest. So whatever has gotten accumulated in the lower lobes of the lungs doesn't get completely thrown out. So by this process, what we're doing is emptying out the lower lobes of the lungs and enabling fresh air to enter that space. It's like doing, there are cupboards in the house which you haven't seen for many years, and then one fine day you're trying to clean it out. So it's like trying to say, let me clean this space so that something new can come in, like fresh air and therefore fresh prana and energy, right? Let's do a variation of this. Instead of Om, I would like you all to do a humming sound. So what you're going to do is you're going to inhale the same way as you did without much effort. But as you exhale, keeping the hand at the lower abdomen, and you're going to hum. Keeping your mouth closed, but making a humming sound, right? So let's do 6 breaths like this. with your eyes closed, paying attention to the lower abdomen and letting the exhale emerge and originate from there. Yeah. Keeping your spine straight, relax, keeping the body relaxed. You can bring the neck down slightly so that the neck is also relaxed. Four more times. Inhale freely, and as you exhale, do a humming sound to the extent that is possible for you. To the extent that you can extend your exhalation and emptying out your lower lobes of the lungs by using the lower abdomen and starting the exhalation from the lower abdomen. Two more times. Yeah, if you've done about 4 to 6 times, that's good. Right. So again, this is another way of using sound to enable you to focus on the breath, allow your breath and sound to align, and working with the lower abdomen to push out the stale air from the lower lobes of the lungs so that you can inhale better. Obviously, when you throw something, there is more space created. So therefore, maybe some of you are already finding that your inhalation seems a little more expanded. It's possible, right? The next thing we do is to improve the inhalation, right? So I have worked a little bit on the exhalation. How do I improve the inhalation? So what we will do is, you can just look at me once. I'm going to raise my hand up and also slightly look up and arch my back, keeping the elbows bent as I inhale. And as I exhale, I'm going to do Om. Again, inhale. So maybe you can try it out about 3 or 4 times. As you inhale, focus on your chest, raise your arms up, breathe into your chest and exhale. Right. Do it 4 more times so that you get a sense of it, of how it is coordinating your breath and movement and enabling you to inhale better. And exhale, come back. So as you inhale, take the arms from the side, elbows bent, lift up your head, arch your back, and exhale. Let's do it 2 more times. Last time. Right. Yeah. So just also looking at time, do we have a couple more minutes, Ramesh? Do you think we could do one more movement?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So one more thing that you could do is, you could do, as you inhale, Take your hand up and just bend to one side. And exhale, just bring your hand down and do Om. So I'll do it one more time. You take one hand, inhale, continue the inhalation and go to one side. Exhale, come back. Om. So let's do it together. I'll do it a couple of times. So inhale, take one hand up, continue the inhalation. Extend, feel the inhalation, this whole area. Stretch. As you inhale, exhale. The other hand, inhale. Continue the inhalation as you bend to one side. Feeling this side of the lungs fill in. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. The other hand and inhale, paying attention to this side. Then exhale. The other side, inhale. Exhale. Yeah. So these are a couple of simple things which you can do on a daily basis, which is actually borrowed from what we would normally do when we are feeling tired or something, no? Like usually in the morning we'll get up and we'll stretch ourselves like this or whatever else. Or maybe we'll just like do like this or like this, right? But we are also connecting it to the breath. So when you combine it with the breath, you're actually connecting the movement, the musculoskeletal structure with the respiratory system, with the circulatory system, with all the other, because the breath goes everywhere, no? It's not limited to any one particular part. So you're actually, like how we said in the beginning, you're trying to align all these different systems and bring a sense of well-being to all these systems. So this is something that you can practice on a daily basis, doing, focusing on the lower abdomen, chanting Om 6 to 10 times, then humming 6 to 10 times, then the hand movement, right? Opening up your chest and bringing your hand down about 6 times. And then this lateral movement, again about 6 times each side, alternating sides. And then you can end again with your Om chanting and see how your breath has changed from the beginning. So maybe why don't we do that? Just end with about 3 breaths of Om chanting, the way you did. So inhale normally and exhale, chant Om, and notice what has shifted. So like I said, the idea is also to begin to observe what is happening to you. Can I be sensitive to any shifts that may have happened from when I started and I did this short 10-minute practice? What has changed? So you can just do 3 Oms, 3 breaths. Inhale freely. As you exhale, chant Om. Once again, you can do totally 3 breaths. And what I would like to invite you to do is, once you're done with the 3 breaths, if you have observed something for yourself, you can maybe type it in the chat box. And it'll be nice to hear, at least that way, because I don't think we can have a scenario where all of you can speak. So you can type out what your experience was with this short 10-minute practice. What did you observe for yourself?
I'll speak to myself. Anita, thanks for making us do that. It's very, this is the first time I'm doing online yoga. So thanks to COVID, right? So no, the way I felt was the mind stopped racing for me. So you're focusing on your breath and you're making your body do certain actions. Yeah. And
course, is that if a simple practice can do it, then if there is a practice which is customized for you by your teacher, taking into account all your other factors, then imagine the power of adapted practice. Definitely. Yeah.
So I'm seeing some comments which I'd like Madhu, if you want to just read them out. If there are questions also from the audience, so
we'll
please.
open it out for questions. Yes.
Yeah.
There was already a question when you were doing the session. Jayalakshmi ma'am had asked you to explain about Ama. There was another person who had asked you to explain about Yama and Niyama. So
Yama and Niyama. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you read out the exact question? Sorry, I think I saw Jayalakshmi's question. Can you explain Ama, which is considered toxic in Ayurveda? Yeah, like I said, the body creates its own toxins from what it takes in. No, the name for in English we call it toxin. In Ayurveda we call it Ama. So Ama is what is produced when the food that you eat is not digested well. So if the digestion is not okay, then the food, instead of getting converted into nutrition and nourishing the body, therefore, instead of that, it will get converted into toxicity and therefore lead to problems. So that's why I said immunity is therefore very important and is connected to the digestive capacity as well. So it's really important to look at digestion if you want to look at building immunity. It can't just be, like I said, the number of white blood cells in my body. It has to be beyond that. So thanks for asking that question. It brings a very definitive connection between immunity and digestion. So immunity and respiration is very clear, immunity and digestion, and therefore also immunity and circulation. So immunity is really something that is the essence that comes out of when all these systems are in healthy condition. What was the other question? Sorry.
The other question was sent privately. It was about, can you explain more about Yama and Niyama? Can you talk about it a little bit?
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, if we want to have good immunity, it's also about the mind and the quality of our relationships. So Yama and Niyama are actually two very, very essential components of yoga practice, which enable us to keep out all that is unwanted. No? So how do I ensure that I don't engage in things that will cause me harm? That is Yama. That is Niyama, right? And how do I ensure that I don't cause any harm to others? That is Yama. So Yama and Niyama are really enabling us to reduce the toxic overload in our body. So it becomes very important. Although it seems like trivial, but it becomes very important to say, maybe I have a Niyama of saying, just like we say, no, every day morning I take a bath. That is my discipline. So like that, I'm saying that I'm not going to go and eat at a restaurant, for example, that uses, let's say, non-organic oil. I know almost all restaurants use it, but so Niyama is about saying I draw my boundary here, that I won't engage in things beyond this. No. And Yama is saying, therefore, if somebody comes with that kind of energy or environment, I'm not going to let that in. So it's about what is the boundary that I create for myself to ensure that the toxic overload doesn't become too much for me, so that at least I can handle it. I hope that answers your question. If not, you can type in the chat box and I can take it easily.
Nidhi ma'am also has a question.
Yeah.
She is saying that she has low stamina and that she gets tired easily.
And sometimes I wake up tired. Yeah. I would suggest you find a teacher in this tradition if you can, and get a personal practice designed, because the way we work in this tradition is like you have written certain conditions and certain symptoms. We take that into account when we design a practice for the person. We teach the person and then we ask them to come for a review after a couple of weeks. We modify the practice based on the feedback that we receive from you. So it becomes something very customized for you. And I think you said you're in Delhi. So if you just get in touch with me, I can put you in touch with people who are in Delhi who can help you with this. So maybe I think Madhu will be sharing my contact details at the end of
Yeah,
this.
we will share the contact
So
details.
you can just feel free to connect with me after the program, and I'll put you in touch with somebody who's in Delhi. There are quite a few good teachers from
Some of us have come across people who want to do yoga, but then they find that it's very difficult to be disciplined about it. So we do it for a day or two, and then some part of our body starts aching, and we take a break for 1 or 2 days, and then we find that we've lost that momentum, and then we go back to our regular routine. So any tips on how we can be more disciplined, or how can we overcome this?
Yeah. So actually, a few weeks ago, I think my teacher was also asked the same question: How do you cultivate discipline? And she said, I'm quoting her. She said, "Discipline is a very difficult thing, and I struggle with it." So I'm saying you're not alone. And if you come to me as a teacher, I also struggle with discipline. So don't feel bad. Like I said, we all have a very long way to go. That said, there are no one is there are no easy tips, right? Okay, if you do this, magically things will change. But I think we've got to understand, therefore we have to understand what creates obstacles, no, like what creates obstacles for me to develop this new habit. um, and it's really a new habit, no. So therefore, to better understand what are the factors that come in, like for example, Ramesh, you were saying my body is aching. So if my body is aching, then I don't want to do the practice. So therefore I then go to my teacher and say, hey, this practice is not working, can you give me a different practice, right? So I don't sit with the excuse that, okay, I will practice for 10 days and only then I will go to my teacher. I tell my students, if you're not practicing for more than 3-4 days, please come back to me, which means that we need to change your practice. That practice is obviously not working for you, right? So that is an obstacle. The other obstacle could be that I'm feeling very tired in the morning, I'm not able to get up. So really at one level, maybe the practice itself needs to change for you to feel motivated, right? But then also remember that our mind is very resistant to change. So we also got to see why our mind is creating those, no. So I like to look at it as, if I were to help my child learn that brushing is important every day in the morning and night, whatever new habit that I want my child to learn, what would I do? No, I have to be patient, I have to cajole, I have to say, it's okay, just do this one step, just come to the bathroom, open the tap, after that we'll see whether you want to brush or not. So maybe to say, okay, let me just do this one thing. So really to think about how would you work with yourself if you were a child, no, rather than treating yourself as an adult. Because when we are talking about creating new habits, we really have to work from the space of cajoling a child. So I find that also helpful. So therefore, not being too rigid and strict, and finding joy in your practice. No, it can't be like a very stiff, stern practice. And then, so how do you find joy also? No, if I enjoy doing something, I'll automatically be more committed to it, more motivated to do it. So these are factors that your teacher can help you bring into your practice. So I would suggest find a teacher you can work with and get into a habit. And that way you're accountable. Sometimes we don't practice because we are not accountable to anybody, no? So
Yes.
also, how do I bring in some accountability? That's also important, I feel.
Oh, we have another question from Chitra ma'am. She's asked, how does one prevent the negativity in these, like this present situation, especially from getting us down? And she's also asked if there are any specific yoga sessions or pranayams that you're offering right now.
Okay. Yeah, Chitra, that's a difficult situation. No? How does one prevent the negativity? In yoga, there's at least in the Yoga Sutra, which is which I've studied with my teacher. The idea is to see that there is going to be sorrow and suffering for us, for others, no matter what. No, That is a fundamental truth of life, that is inevitable. Sorrow, death, suffering, all these are the inevitables of life, as we call it. So we cannot prevent the negativity or whatever. What we can do is to acknowledge it, that yes, it pulls me down. And once I've acknowledged it, then I can try to do something about it. Maybe get involved in some way, in changing that situation. So therefore, finding out how to recognize that hopefully that will bring a shift in the external environment. It is difficult, and also trying to bring a little bit of compassion to yourself and others. Not to be too hard on yourself, to say, if I'm not out there saving them or doing something for them, then what's the point, or whatever. Find things that you can do from where you are that will help you to change your internal environment. I think that's very important. And are there specific yoga sessions on pranayama that I'm offering now? Right now, I'm doing another program which will end in a couple of weeks. But after that, you're welcome to contact me, and definitely you can sign up. Sure. Please summarize how many times each has to be done. Okay. So the first thing is inhaling normally and exhaling, chanting Om 6 to 10 times. Madhu, maybe you can just type it in the chat box and send it as I'm writing. As I'm saying. And then
can you start from the...
So inhaling normally and exhaling, chant Om 6 to 10 times. Inhaling normally and exhaling with a humming sound 6 to 10 times. 6 breaths, that is.
Anita, the mic, please.
Your mic. I'll type
breath 6 to 10 times. Yeah. And then we did the hand movement, taking the arm up on inhale and exhale, hand down. That again you can do 6 times. And then we did the lateral movement, taking the hand up and bending sideways on inhale and exhale, coming down, chanting Om. That also you can do 6 times. And then you can end with 3 Oms. Yeah, Madhu will type it and send it. Which is the best?
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask.
Yeah, which is the best time for pranayama? After a meal, can I do pranayama? There is, any time is good for pranayama. There is nothing like best time. Only thing, like, you can't do it right after a meal because obviously your stomach is very full, and you won't be able to work with your lower abdomen, especially if you want to exhale, right? So definitely not right after the meal. Maybe give about an hour or hour and a half, definitely after a meal, preferably 2 hours after a meal, you can do pranayama. Yeah. Sure.
Is it 6 times on each sides, or?
Yeah, so you will do 6, left and right is 1 round, so 6 rounds. Yes, so 6 times on each side. Yeah.
Okay, so looks like that's about the questions we have. Madhu will put up the contact details of Anita on the screen at the end of the session. So please, everyone, feel free to take note of that and get in touch with Anita. And I'm sure all of you will enjoy interacting with Anita as much as all of us do. So
thanks.
So anyway, thanks. So once again, thanks everybody for joining. I think we'll wind up with this. It's almost an hour, and we hope to have more and more of these huddle sessions in the next few months. And so we'll